Thanks for joining us.
Talkline Network Radio, America's longest-running Jewish broadcast network, the voice of the Jewish community.
Welcome to the podcast. You are now tuned in to this episode of our podcast. Today we are going to interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in our field. And now, please welcome your host.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And we're back. It's always great to have Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Avi Dershowitz. I guess I'm the only one that addresses you on air as Avi, right?
No, it's interesting. Piscopo, the guy on ABC, he asked me permission to call me Avi because, he likes to go back to the old days of Borough Park in Brooklyn. So there are two of you who call me Avi, along with all my old friends. My old friends don't even know my name is Alan. They just call me Avi all the time.
Well, I call you Alan Avi. I cover all bases here on this program. I know you're from Borough Park. What do you make out about the Hamas rally in the heart of Borough Park the other night, which turned violent?
Well, it's terrible. Hamas is just a despicable terrorist. It's worse than the mafia, because the mafia mostly kills its own. It's worse than any organized crime group. And yet you hear college campus students praising Hamas, praising the murder of babies, praising the murder of children. So, of course, they're going to come to Borough Park, and they're going to go to every place where there are Jews. And they're going to go to Columbia University and NYU and Harvard and Yale. And we have to be ready to respond to them in a possible legal, ethical, and moral way. We have to take them on in the marketplace of ideas. That's why I wrote this little pamphlet. It's just like 80 pages, but we printed 1 million copies of it to be distributed.
People, it's the 10 big anti-Israel lies and how to refute them with truth, and you're giving it out on college campuses, 1 million copies, right?
1 million copies, and we have copies all over the world now, and it just fits in your pocket. And so young college kids have it, and they can look up when people say, oh, Israel's a colonialist country. No, it's an anti-colonialist state. No, it's an anti-apartheid state. No, it's an anti-genocidal state. All the answers are there. So we're hoping that students will respond to falsehoods with truth. That's the best answer in the marketplace of ideas.
Now, you're fighting anti-Semitism. Now, you had an opportunity where you were contemplating becoming the anti-Semitism czar of the United States. You turned it down. Any chances that you'll reconsider?
No, I'm 86 years old. I don't think I belong in the government. I had a long talk with President Trump about it after he got elected. And I explained to him that I'd rather be a kind of advisor, an elder statesman. He said, oh, you want to be my Henry Kissinger? And I said, that's high praise. And he said, oh, you're better looking and smarter than Henry Kissinger. I said, well, maybe better looking, but not smarter. So my goal is to try to help Donald Trump become Israel's best president ever. He's probably already deserves that, maybe Harry Truman and him together. And I want to help him in every possible way. I want to help him defeat lawfare. I want to help him bring about change in the Gaza. I want to help him get the hostages back. I want to help in every possible way. And I didn't want to limit myself just to global anti-Semitism, as important as that is. And I think he should find a younger person who can travel the world and do a great job. And I'll help that person, whoever that is.
You have any recommendations who that person should be?
I don't want to. Several of my friends are applying for the job. And so if the president asks me, I'll give him my discreet private assessment, but I'm not going to do it.
I think Sid Rosenberg said he was interested in that position.
He'd be fantastic. My God, he is the strongest supporter of Israel there is. And I love being on his show. And we fight sometimes, but he is just terrific.
No, he certainly is. Now, are you in touch with the president? Are you advising him in that role of Henry Kissinger?
Well, I'm available to advise him, and he calls from time to time, and I've seen him twice since his election, and I anticipate seeing him on more occasions. And anytime he needs advice, I told him 24/7. He's given me his contact information, and I'm going to use that contact information very sparsely and carefully, and make sure that I use it only when it's absolutely essential.
Now, are we being too sensitive when we look at Steve Bannon or we look at Elon Musk and they raise their hands and we'll like a Hitler salute and people say, oh, they're emulating the Nazi salute? What's your take on that?
Oh, I think it overstates it. I've debated Elon Musk. Elon Musk loves Israel, and he has been very close to the Jewish people. As you know, he went to a Jewish pre kindergarten. As he said, most of his friends in South Africa were Jewish. Many of his high-tech friends are Jewish. If every college student today were an Elon Musk, I'd worry less. I worry much more about Hamas support than I do for people who put up their hand that say, others say, well, that emulates a German salute.
Yeah, I don't think there's any much of it, but a lot of people made a whole big taharam about it, right?
I think they're wrong. That's not our problem today in America. Our problem in America today is hard left progressive college students and faculty who are going to be our future leaders, unfortunately. And that's what we have to worry about. Look, I'm not thrilled with some of the very, very hard right people, Tucker Carlson and others, who are close to the president. But I wasn't thrilled with people who were close to the previous president. So we have to keep our eye open and look over not only our left shoulder, but our right shoulder as well, to make sure that that the American people remain centrist supporters of Israel and Jewish values.
Democratic Party has gone so far left. Do you see any hope that they're going to reconstitute as a more moderate body than they are right now?
Not in the immediate future. As long as they have people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and AOC, they're going to remain captive of the hard left, and they're going to keep losing and losing and losing. Americans don't like that kind of extremist anti-American politics. And remember, scratch an anti-Zionist deep enough and you're going to find somebody who's anti-American. The vast majority of people who are today on college campuses and today protesting hate America, hate Jews, hate Christians, hate anybody who is reasonable and moderate. So this is not just a fight for the survival of the Jewish people in Israel. It's a fight for the survival of Western values, American values. Look, when you see what happened in Gaza with the murder of babies, and you realize this is a war against civilization.
What do you make of senators like Chuck Schumer, who are Jewish and writing a book on anti-Semitism, but yet killed a bill relating to it?
Well, Schumer's been terrible. Shomer Yisrael. If we have a Shomer Yisrael like Schumer, we're in real trouble. He's an opportunist. He's a politician. I've never liked Schumer for some reason. I remember him when he was a student. He's always been
he was your student?
I don't remember whether he was in my class or not, but I do remember him when he was a young man. I remember him when he ran for Congress. I remember him when he ran for senator. And he's always been a self-serving, somewhat hypocritical person who wants to be everything to everybody. The way he handled the Iran deal was one of the most despicable things I've ever seen. He basically went to Biden and said, look, if you need me to vote against Israel, I will. But if you don't need me, hey, give me a free pass. Let me vote the right way. And the president didn't need him, gave him a pass. So he then bragged about voting against the Iran deal. He was prepared to vote for the Iran deal if the president told him to do that. So I'm not a Chuck Schumer fan. I'd love to see somebody run against him, but I don't think that's in the cards. And he talks of himself as the highest elected Jewish official in American history. We could do better.
Well, actually, Lyndon Baines Johnson, they say, according to some reports, was actually Jewish. If you look at if you saw those reports,
it may have been Jewish, and Hamilton. Who knows? We spread our genes pretty widely. In Spain today, something like 20% of the population can trace themselves to Sephardic Jews. They call themselves Spaniards. So
wow.
We'll see.
By the way, Chuck Schumer, you say Shomer Yisrael. I think he's more Shomer Yishmael. You may have misheard him. Now, it's interesting. By the way, there's a fellow named Sinai who says that the majority of Palestinian Arabs in Judea and Samaria have Jewish genes and come from Jews. And Hebrew University has a survey that a lot of them have an Ashkenazic Jewish gene. So they may have been originally Jews.
I can tell you what they don't have. And they don't have deep roots in Palestine. The vast majority of people who now live in the Gaza don't have deep roots in the Gaza. They came from Egypt. They came from Lebanon. Remember that in 1937, 1938, the Peel Commission, the head of the Palestinians said there's no such thing as Palestinians. We're just Southern Syrians. We're part of the greater Arab nation. We don't want a Palestinian state. We just don't want there to be Jews here. We don't want there to be a Jewish state. We don't want to be a Jewish presence. So, I have a new book coming out. It's called Palestinianism, the greatest modern threat to civil liberties, peace, and human rights. And Palestinianism is a desire to focus attention only on the wrongs of Israel and the rights of Palestine. I'm doing that as a pamphlet too, and we're going to distribute hopefully hundreds of thousands of copies of that pamphlet as well. Look, if I were 26 years old, I'd be a volunteer right now in the Gaza or in Lebanon. I'm not. I'm 86 years old, so I have only one weapon. And it's called a ballpoint pen. I don't even have a computer. So I try to write 3,000 or 4,000 words a day, and I try to write at least 2 or 3 op-eds a week and a book every 6 months. That's my weapon. That's the only thing I can fight for other than being on great shows like yours.
Oh, thank you. You're a mighty warrior for Israel. I don't care if you're 86. You're more, I think you're stronger fighting Israel today than 20 years ago.
Well, it's more of a need for it. You fight Israel as the need develops. When I was growing up, in the 60s and 70s, everybody supported Israel. I started my support for Israel in 67 in the run up to the 6-Day War when people were beginning to turn against Israel. Remember that the Soviet Union supported Israel. Communists supported Israel. The National Lawyers Guild did. Then when the Soviet Union changed and they discovered oil, basically that the Arab countries had oil and Israel had sand and oranges, and they turned against Israel, that's when Noam Chomsky, National Lawyers Guild, all the people on the left, suddenly following the lead of the Soviet Union and the communist parties, turned against Israel.
Our guest, Harvard Law Emeritus, Alan Avi Dershowitz, and he is outspoken and he's a champion and a warrior for Israel. What do you make of the president's plan for Gaza?
Well, it's interesting. I love thinking out of the box. Let's start talk about the moral issue. Start with the moral issue, then we'll get to the legal issue. Morally, if you could have stopped what happened on October 7th by clearing out Gaza and making everybody in Gaza move to different places, I think everybody would have said, do it. It's worth it. It's worth it. People are more important than places. Peace is more important than place. I think it was Rabbi Soloveitchik who once said that if it required the taking of a single Jewish life, even to recapture the hotel, pikuach nefesh doesn't make it worth it. So life is more important than place. People move all the time. Let's remember what happened. After the Second World War, 3 million ethnic Germans who lived in Sudetenland, had lived there since the 11th century, 900 years, were forcibly taken out. And they were told, look, you caused the Second World War. You have given up your right to live there. You're going to have to move. And they all moved. Thousands of them died in the process. But we had peace in Central Europe until Ukraine. And if we can bring about a result that actually produces peace, I'm willing to think about alternatives, even alternatives that require people to move out of their homes. People move all the time. Pakistanis move to India. Indians move to Pakistan. 15 million of them in order to make peace in Asia. So if you can make peace by producing a result that is unpleasant and requires people to move. Look how many Jews had to move. They had to move out of Gaza in 2005. They had lived there for many, many, many years. They moved. They objected. They complained. They moved. They resettled. 700,000 Jews had to move out of Arab countries after Israel was established. They complained. They lost fortunes. Jews had to move out of Europe. You know how many trillions of dollars of loss accrued to Jews who, not only the ones who were murdered, but the ones who were saved. There are no Jews today living in most parts of Europe. They had to move. So moving is not a big deal. Saving lives is a big deal. And it's not illegal. Why is it not illegal? Because the relevant laws all say you can't move populations except if you need it to save innocent lives. And you may need it to save innocent lives. So I'm on board with President Trump thinking outside the box. There are other solutions that are compromise solutions. Let me give you one. Let's take all the people, every single one of them, 1 million people out of South Gaza, move them mandatorily to North Gaza, make South Gaza completely empty for 2 years, knock down every building in South Gaza, destroy every tunnel, build concrete land, make electronics so you can never have another tunnel, rebuild Gaza with money from Qatar, then bring the 1 million people back from the north to the south, then take all the people from the north, move them to the south for 2 years, do the same thing in the north. Make sure that the only people who can return to Gaza are people who have no affiliation with Hamas, people who are prepared to make peace with Israel. Okay, there'd be an inconvenience of a couple of years. There was more inconvenience when Nasser built the Aswan Dam in Egypt. More people had to be dislocated. So dislocation, movement is not a big deal. Peace is a big deal.
Hard to achieve because you have these Hamas people. You have, first they voted for Hamas, and a lot of the civilians had the hostages in their homes, and they grew up on a currency of hating Israel. So that's not going to change overnight. I'm not sure if it's going to change ever.
Well, it did change overnight in Germany and in Japan when the United States totally and completely, along with England, defeated Germany. It caused the end of Nazism. The Marshall Plan then resulted in Germany being our closest economic ally. The same thing happened in Japan. So when you defeat the military background of Hamas, when you defeat Hezbollah, when you defeat the Houthis, when you defeat Islamic Jihad, you can help destroy the ideology.
Easier said than done.
It's much, much easier said than done, but it's not impossible.
Because even the current day, it was a great miracle that bombs on buses in Tel Aviv explode with nobody getting killed. But that was
even some Jews were involved in that. You saw that according to Shin Bet this morning. Some Jews have been arrested for helping. So
and that Judean, that comes from Judea Samaria, those terrorists. You can imagine devastation. It's the hatred for Jews is all over.
Jews are our own worst enemy. Temple Emmanuel in New York has done more harm over the past century for Jewish values than virtually any American institution. Temple Emmanuel opposed the rescue of Jews during the Holocaust, opposed the establishment of the state of Israel. Today, it won't allow people like me to speak at Temple Emmanuel. I'm banned from Temple Emmanuel from the 92nd. Why?
Can you sue them?
No, I can't sue them. They're a private religious institution. Nobody should go. People should stay away from Emmanuel. Emmanuel has been a force for evil in America for the last 100 years. It produced the kinds of German Jews that refused to do anything about the Holocaust. Indeed, they told people, there's a book written recently called Jews Be Quiet. It's a Temple Emmanuel book. It basically said the Jews should not object to what's going on during the Holocaust because it'll make Roosevelt mad at us. That's Temple Emmanuel. Temple Emmanuel is the New York Times. Temple Emmanuel is CNN. One of the people on the board of directors of Temple Emmanuel was the head of news at CNN. These are the most anti-Israel people coming out of Temple Emmanuel. Temple Emmanuel is a force for evil in the Jewish community. And I would hope that nobody, no decent Jew would set foot in Temple Emmanuel. There's an old joke about Temple Emmanuel. A chassid has to say Kaddish, and it's getting dark, and he goes into Temple Emmanuel, and the usher says, "Sir, you have to take off your kippah. We don't allow a kippah in Temple Emmanuel." And the chassid prays to God and says, "God, can you imagine? They won't let me into Temple Emmanuel with my kippah." And God said, "You think you have a problem? They won't let me into Temple Emmanuel at all." And so, and they won't let Alan Dershowitz in Temple Emmanuel. They won't let Alan Dershowitz speak at Temple Emmanuel. Peter Beinart speaks at Temple Emmanuel. He gets a welcome. He got paid, I think, $25,000 to come to Temple Emmanuel and preach against the existence of Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. So, Temple Emmanuel, we don't need friends like you.
By the way, do you ever consider, you have so many books that you've written and all serious books, ever under consideration to write a book of Jewish humor? Because I know you have a lot of good Jewish jokes.
Well, I wrote a piece in yesterday's Daily News in which I complained about SNL, saying it's not funny, Saturday Night Live. And just this week, I saw Elon Gold, who's a phenomenal Jewish comedian. I saw Modi. In fact, after it was over, I went up on the stage and I sang with Modi, Sheyabana Beis HaMikdash, because he, was a cantorial student. And I was a choir boy in Moshe Kusevitsky's choir. So we sang Sheyabana Beis HaMikdash together. Modi and Elon Gold are funnier than anybody who's ever been on Saturday Night Live.
Absolutely correct with that. Our guest, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Avi Dershowitz, his latest book is called 10 Big Anti-Israel Lies. He's given out 1 million copies on campus. Getting a little closer to home, what do you make about Governor Hochul putting restrictions on the mayor? Is that all legal? I know she can remove them. Can you just remove somebody because you don't like them because they're working with Republicans? What's the law?
The law, unfortunately, gives Hochul considerable power. It shouldn't. It should require a process, a careful process. There's an election coming up. There's no reason to put restrictions or to try to remove him. People should vote according to their conscience. If they don't like him, you vote against him. If you do like him, you vote for him. He's going to run against some very, very powerful people. For example, Andrew Cuomo. Israel has no better friend than Andrew Cuomo in the world. Mario Cuomo was a close friend of mine. I loved him. He was a mentor of mine. And I'm very close to both Andrew and Chris, and they're all great, great friends of Israel.
No question about that. But she can, at will, can a governor will say, I don't like the way the mayor looks, and I'm going to take out of office. Can you do that?
There'd be a lawsuit if that happened, but he wasn't.
She's saying basically over here, I don't like the fact you're working with the Trump administration, so I'm going to put monitors and I'm going to restrict your powers.
I don't think that's proper, and I think that if he wanted to bring a lawsuit, he probably could do so, but he probably can live with the restrictions. Look, he's going to have to worry about his own electoral future. He's not going to be prosecuted, and Danielle Sassoon, the woman who quit, who was the acting DA, was my former research assistant. I hired her literally when she came to Harvard out of Ramaz. She was the #1 student at Ramaz, and Bob Abrams and his wife recommended Danielle to me, and I met her and I immediately hired her. She worked for me for several years while she was a student. Then I had a big argument with her because she wanted to go to Yale Law School. I wanted her to stay at Harvard. She went to Yale and had this incredibly distinguished career. Worked for Justice Scalia, who's a good friend of mine as well, and then became acting U.S. attorney. Unfortunately, she was put in a position where she couldn't morally accept the commands of the Justice Department, and so she resigned as a matter of protest, and I think she'll go on to do great things.
Right. She's Orthodox, and she has kids in Ramaz, so she's keeping up that tradition. But were you surprised that she and other prosecutors resigned?
I was not surprised. I think it was a power struggle between Main Justice in Washington and the very independent U.S. Attorney's Office in New York. And in an article I wrote in the New York Post yesterday, I said they were both right. The Justice Department had the right to ask for a dismissal of the charges against Adams, and she had the right to resign in protest. So there can be two rights and no wrongs in a situation as complex as that.
Are we going to see an overhaul of DOJ justice? Because you and I had discussed that in the climate that's existed the last number of years, there's been a lot of liberties taken with people's liberties and people being prosecuted when they shouldn't be prosecuted, not just Donald Trump, in general. So do you foresee a change that going back to the way it should be legally? Because right now, people taking chances, even though they may be overturned, but they're doing it.
I agree. And I do think that Pam Bondi is the right person for the job at this time. I worked with Pam very closely on the first Trump impeachment when he was impeached on unconstitutional grounds. She's a great lawyer, great friend of Israel. She was the first call I got, I think on October 7th or 8th. She called me on the phone and said, Alan, I can't believe what happened in Israel today. All Israelis and all Jews have my sympathy. Pam Bondi is a great friend of Israel, great friend of the Jewish people, and a great friend of justice. So I couldn't ask for anything better than having her as the Attorney General of the United States, and she's going to call them straight. She's going to call it straight down the middle.
Overall, I think the verdict is still out, but from what I've read, statistically, more Jews voted for Donald Trump than usually vote for Republican in an election, even though some say, no, it's, Kamala Harris still had the majority of the Jewish vote. How do you see it? I think, are we changing? Are we becoming more willing to vote for a Republican? I'm not talking about the Orthodox, I'm talking about the general Jewish population.
We're not changing. They're changing. They're changing. It's Ronald Reagan. He didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left him. It's happening in England. We're seeing British Jews leaving the left-wing parties and joining the Conservative Party. It's happening in Canada. It's happening in Australia. And of course, it's happening in the United States. It's gradual in the United States. But I think more American Jews today are voting against the Democrats. I'm not saying they're voting for the Republicans. They're voting against the Democrats. How could any Jew vote for AOC? How can any Jew vote for Ilhan Omar? How could any Jew vote for a Jew like Bernie Sanders, a self-hating Jew? How can any Jew vote for my former colleague, Liz Warren? These are Israel haters. And you hate Israel, we're not voting for you. And I think a lot of Jews send that message.
It sounds like you should include Senator Chuck Schumer in that category.
I do. I don't think I would vote for him. I don't vote in New York. But if I were voting in New York, I don't think I would vote for Chuck Schumer. I don't think he has served the interests either of New York or of America or of the Jewish community. He is not somebody that would ever get my support for elected office. It depends on who he's running against, obviously. But, the guy who could have been senator from New York was Bob Abrams, who narrowly lost 6 years earlier. He would have been a much, much better senator than I think Chuck Schumer has been, because Bob Abrams, cares deeply, deeply about the Jewish community. He puts the interests of Americans and Jews and Israel above his own self-interest. Schumer doesn't put anything above his own self-interest.
I was curious. There was a campaign just a couple of weeks ago in New York to get Jews who are registered Republican to switch affiliations to the Democratic Party because the action is in the political primaries. Your thoughts about this campaign, which I understand had some success in getting Jews to switch affiliations. What do you think about that?
I understand it. I think, you go where the action is and where the primaries are. I think it's important that pro-Israel people be elected to mayor of New York, to public advocate, to all the positions, to the city council. New York City is, many in the city council now are becoming very anti-Israel. And that's a big problem. And New Yorkers have to fight it. I spend 3 or 4 months a year in New York. And so New York is very substantially part of my home. But I live in Florida, and I vote in Florida, where it's much easier to vote for somebody who is pro-Israel. DeSantis is extremely pro-Israel, and the senators are both very pro-Israel. So Florida, as you know, when I grew up, of course, New York had was the biggest state. Now today, Florida is the third biggest state, and it's becoming the biggest Jewish state. There are so many Jews, so many Israelis that live where we live. We live in Miami Beach. Others live in Fort Lauderdale. I recently I spoke at an event for the shul in Palm Beach. I helped represent them and to get a larger shul. So the Jewish communities in southern Florida are really thriving.
No, they're definitely growing. There's no question about that. The future is in Florida. New York is having a problem. Before I let you go, I was just curious. I know in past shows you mentioned about some of your former friends, some of the liberals in Martha's Vineyards have shunned you, and people you had a close relationship and you helped. Any change now that Donald Trump has become president? Are you finding less invective? Are you finding you becoming more welcome to some of these people that have shunned you recently?
No, the opposite. They all blame me for getting Trump elected. They think
blame you.
cast the deciding vote for Trump. No, they don't talk to me, and I don't talk to them. I have no interest in talking to them. I have no interest ever in having a conversation with Larry David or with many of the other people who I helped. I helped Larry David's kid get into college. Did I ever get a thank you for it? No. Did he ever contribute a nickel to the college that let him in, his daughter in? I don't think so. So, not a nice person. And most of the people, not all, but most of the people in Martha's Vineyard who turned against me are virulently anti-Israel. They hate Israel. They hate Jews. Many of them are Jews. Many of them are self-hating Jews. And so we have strong friends on Martha's Vineyard, but they're pro-Israel friends. We started a Chabad on Martha's Vineyard. We had 900 people on Martha's Vineyard coming to a cultural Israel Jewish event. We get 400 people sometimes coming to a Shabbat dinner. I gave a class at Chabad last year on the book of Bereshit. We got great attendance. So we have a terrific community in Martha's Vineyard, which I helped to establish, much like I helped to establish the first Chabad at Harvard or at any university. So, Chabad has become an incredible, powerful, and positive force in the Jewish community, in the pro-Israel community, and I'm very proud of my affiliation with Chabad. I go back with the Rebbe to I think it was either 51 or 52, when I was a student at Brooklyn Talmudical Academy. I met the Rebbe and I had a close, relationship with him until he died, and I maintain a very close relationship with Chabad.
In 1951, was the Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson or his father-in-law?
No, it was him. It was him.
Oh, it was him.
He had just become the Rebbe, and my friend Zvi Groner's uncle was the Rebbe's assistant. So we went there to have lunch one day at Eastern Parkway, and the Rebbe came out, very young man, and he gave me a bechina. He asked me about Baba Kama, and I don't know if I did good or bad, but I was tested by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and so it was a great honor to be able to be tested by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Then I met him on several occasions afterward, and we worked very closely together on Soviet Jewry and on a range of other issues. He was a great, great, great man. I've had the pleasure of meeting so many great Jewish men and women throughout history, from Golda Meir to Ben Gurion to virtually all the prime ministers of Israel. And as you know, I'm very close to Bibi, who I've known since 1970, and to Bougie Herzog, who I've known for many, many years since he was a Ramaz student. So, by the way, Ramaz also canceled me. They wouldn't allow me to speak. I was going to give a free talk to college seniors and high school juniors and seniors, getting them ready to go off to college. And the headmaster of the school said, no, we will not allow Alan Dershowitz to set foot on Ramaz. So to this day, I have never spoken to the students of Ramaz. And so, this Jewish cancellation, whether it be the 92nd Street Y, Temple Emmanuel, or Ramaz, is a great source of enmity within the Jewish community. And we have so much self-hatred and so much self-righteousness.
Why do you suppose we have so much Jewish self-hatred? Why do you suppose we see so much of it?
We had it from the time Moshe brought the people out of Egypt. We had self-hatred. We had self-hatred. People forget that when Dreyfus was accused, many Jewish leaders supported the government and said, oh, execute him, sentence him to jail. Jewish self-hatred has been as constant as Jewish self-love. And we have to rid our community of it. We have to start with organizations like Temple Emmanuel, the 92nd Street Y, the Ramaz School, and other institutions. I recently learned of a Reform rabbi in Westchester who was offered an opportunity to have me speak, and he said, I'll never allow Alan Dershowitz to be in my shul. So, these Reform shuls that think they know more than other Jewish leaders have to understand that they're not speaking for the wonderful members. They're speaking for an elite group of hard left rabbis who put left-wing ideology over Ahavat Yisrael.
Final question. What did you do together with Lubavitcher Rebbe as far as Soviet Jewry was concerned?
Well, we had a long talk about it, and he wanted to do quiet diplomacy, and I was in favor of the Jackson-Vanik Amendment and more public diplomacy. And we basically agreed that he would do his quiet diplomacy, I would do my more public diplomacy, and both together, I think we achieved the greatest human rights result in modern history, freeing 1 million Jews from the oppression of the Soviet Union. It changed Israel, it changed America, all to the better. It's the only immigration in modern history that has elevated the educational level of the countries to which the immigrants came, because the Soviet people, Soviet Jews, brought with them such incredible talents in education. Obviously, we see Google as one manifestation of Sergey Brin and so many others who have brought high technology to Israel and to the United States.
I want to thank you for joining us. You've written so many books. So what number is the next one, and what's it about again?
57 is coming up, and 57 is Palestinianism. And then I have a serious academic book coming out called The Preventive State, about how we're moving more toward prevention of violence than reaction to violence. So I continue to write every single day, and I hope Hashem gives me the strength to get to 60 books. That's my goal, 60 books in 90 years. That will make me very happy.
You're going to be a chazan for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur?
No, but I'll be a chazan at a home. We usually we have a congregation on our porch, and I lead the congregation, and I can still keep a tune, and I read from the Torah for my 86th birthday, my 83rd anniversary of my bar mitzvah. Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'chol shirecha. I'll keep laning.
We'll have next time you do a musical rendition. And by the way, it's in your family, because the Lemmers, Yankee and Shalom Lemmer, are relatives of yours, right?
Cousins. I just saw Shalom 2 nights ago. He sang at the gala that Elon Gold performed comedy. Shalom is absolutely out of this world. He sang Hebrew songs, Yiddish songs, songs from Broadway. He sang God Bless America in Yiddish, God Bench America. He was fantastic. I love Shalom. I love Yankel. They continue. My grandfather was a chazan, so they continue the tradition of Dershowitz family and chazanut.
Anyway, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Avi Dershowitz, thank you for being with us. Look forward to having you again, and keep on speaking out for our people. God should bless you, because you are a champion for Israel, and you're not afraid to speak out, despite the fact that people won't let you speak and they won't become your friends, but you don't care. You're doing it for our people, so thank you.
I can be on your show. I'm happy, because you're a champion for Israel and the Jewish people, and our friendship goes back many years, and I hope it continues for many years. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to having you back for Shabbat dinner. You can speak all you want, and you won't get banned at our table.
That was a wonderful dinner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Sure.
Thank you for tuning in to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, the pulse beat of the Jewish community.
For continuous Jewish programs, TalklineNetwork.com, or our 24-hour-a-day listen line at 641-741-0389. For past shows, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, and all major podcast platforms, or jewishpodcast.org. Thanks for listening to the TalklineNetwork.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.